speaking of people talking about falsehood, you have a lot to say about theology as a discipline, if it can even be called that, the way that you paint it. Here's a quote to give you a taste of the kind of thing I'm talking about. You say, "This is utterly typical of the way theologians think, ignore what is actually being said, and pretend it was all intended to be a symbol or metaphor." Do you think there's any legitimate form of theology?
Of course. I mean, I think if you actually go to a department of theology and talk to professors of theology, you'll find they're doing wonderful things. I mean, they're translating the Dead Sea Scrolls, they're looking at biblical history, they're looking at a form of anthropology, really. That's fine. What is not fine is logic chopping about the fundamental meaning of the transubstantiation or the Trinity or something of that sort. That's the kind of theology that I think is not a subject. The kind of theology that is a subject is historical scholarship, literary scholarship, that kind of thing.
Do you think, would you say the same thing about the kind of philosophy that deals with absolute truths? If a moment ago you said that perhaps you don't think there is a basis to the truth in ethics, philosophers who try to do that, like Sam Harris, are essentially doing the same thing. They're trying to find that they're engaging in an area that you don't think even exists. Is that analogous to theology?
There's plenty of room to argue about what truth is in the real world, in science. I think that in the case of morals, it's much harder to use the word truth. I would prefer not to use the word truth where morals are concerned.
Do you think the kind of theology that you spoke of a second ago, when it comes into investigating the nature of certain religious claims, do you think that is useful?
Well, I think, as I said, as a form of anthropology, I mean, an anthropologist who studies what we could call the theology of a tribe of people in Africa or somewhere, I mean, that's anthropologically interesting, talking about what the people believe and how their cultural beliefs have developed and what it means to them. That I think is, and so if the theologians who study the beliefs of Roman Catholics are doing it as anthropologists, I guess that's perfectly legitimate.
Well, I mean, the reason I ask is outside of the anthropological investigations, the kind that you were just dismissing as useless. If an atheist engages with that kind of thing and studies theology in that manner, do you not think that it can be useful in the sense that understanding those controversies can help people to debunk
Good point.
them?
Yes, probably can.
And I mean, the way that you talk about theology might put someone off trying to do that.
Yeah, could be. Yes. That's a fair point.
Because I'm sure you've come across the criticism when you're talking to a religious scholar and you're arguing about and you say, why would God send himself to be tortured? Couldn't he think of a better way? And they're thinking, but there's so much literature on this. Like, how can you say that when you haven't engaged with the theological literature? And then you say, well, theology is a bit useless. It's like, if you'd have engaged with theological literature, then perhaps they would give you the time of day and say, well, at least you've done the reading and are making a point based on...
Well, okay, but I mean, why would I bother to read Christian theology any more than Australian Aboriginal theology or
I suppose the same reason that you would talk about Christian theology more than you talk about the alternative, because it's what you're doing, it's what you're engaging with.
I've got better things to do. I do science.
I see.